Hello and welcome to our first episode of Friendly Friday, a weekly series where we take a look at a budget, standard or modern deck and take it through a friendly league on Magic Online. Today, as you can see, we're taking a look at red-white humans in Modern. This is an aggressive tribal strategy, with Champion of the Parish being one of the main build-around cards. So Champion of the Parish reads, whenever another human enters a battlefield under our control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of the Parish. And of course, every single creature in this deck is a human, which means that the champion can get very large very quickly, especially when played on turn 1. Another important payoff card in the deck is Thalia's Lieutenant, which says when she enters a battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other human you control, and in this deck that reads each other creature you control. And then the second line of text is essentially the same as the one from Champion of the Parish, so whenever we play another human, put a +1/+1 counter on Thalia's Lieutenant herself. And then we also have Mentor of the Meek as another payoff card. Doesn't specify humans, but whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters a battlefield under our control, we can pay a generic mana to draw a card. And so in the late game, this can give us a pretty big advantage. Then, of course, we need a critical mass of humans to make this deck work. We've got a total of 7 1-mana 2/1s. All humans, of course. We've got Kytheon, Hero of Akros, which has the added benefit of transforming into Gideon Battleforged if we attacked with multiple creatures. We've got Mardu Woe-Reaper, which can exile a creature card from a graveyard and gain a life when a warrior enters the battlefield, including himself. And we have a number of human warriors in the deck to trigger him. And we also have Soldier of the Pantheon, which is another 1-mana 2/1 that has protection from multicolored, and whenever an opponent casts a multicolored spell, we also gain 1 life, so that can be relevant in certain matchups. Then we also have a number of interesting cards here that trigger our humans multiple times. We've got Lightning Berserker and Norin the Wary, which kind of have a similar role. So Lightning Berserker has a dash, which means that we can cast it for its dash cost, put it into play, give it haste, attack with it if we want to, and then return it to our hand at the beginning of our end step. So that means we can replay the Berserker every turn for its dash cost and keep triggering cards like Champion of the Parish, Thalia's Lieutenant, or Mentor of the Meek. And of course that also means the Berserker can dodge sorcery speed removal and sweeper effects, which can be nice in a deck like this one, which is vulnerable to sweeper effects. And then we also have a Norin the Wary, which is a very peculiar card, since Norin never really gets to attack or block, because whenever a player casts a spell or a creature attacks, including our own creatures, we have to exile Norin the Wary and then return it to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So Norin never attacks or blocks. Norin dodges any sort of removal spell because he gets exiled in response, but that basically means that we have a way of triggering cards like Champion of the Parish, Thalia's Lieutenant, and Mentor of the Meek over and over again, because every turn someone's gonna cast a spell or attack, and then Norin gets exiled and then returns, and of course it's a human warrior, so it triggers cards like Champion, like Thalia's Lieutenant, and it's also warrior to go with our Mardu Woe-Reaper, which is not irrelevant. Then we get to some of our 2-drops. We've got a Glory-Bound Initiate, the only creature with more than 2 power, so does not trigger Mentor of the Meek, but it's still a very powerful human from Amonkhet, as it's a 3/1 that can potentially attack as a 4/4 lifelinker when we exert him. We also have Imposing Sovereign, which makes the opponent's creatures enter the battlefield tapped, so we can keep attacking and ignore the blocker the opponent plays every turn. We also have Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, which is great since we have very few non-creature spells, so we don't really get affected by Thalia that much, but there's a certain amount of decks that get really destroyed when we have a Thalia on turn 2, because then every single spell they cast costs 1 generic mana more to cast, and that gives us enough time to hopefully kill the opponent before they get to recover. And then we have a number of removal spells to round out the deck. We've got Path to Exile, which can exile a creature, and we've got Lightning Bolt, which can also go upstairs by dealing 3 damage to a creature or player. Then we can take a look at our sideboard real quick. We've got an additional copy of Path to Exile when we need additional removal spells. We've got the full 4 Soul Wardens, which come in against burn decks and other aggro decks, and of course also works great with cards like Norin the Wary and Lightning Berserker, since we get to gain a life whenever a creature enters the battlefield over and over. We have 2 copies of Stony Silence against decks like Tron and Affinity. We've got another copy of Mentor of the Meek for the grindy games where we expect the game to go a little bit longer and might need the additional card draw. We've got 3 copies of Mirran Crusader against mostly decks like Grixis Shadow, which have a hard time dealing with the Crusader if they don't have the Lightning Bolt enter ready. We have 1 copy of Ranger of Eos, which is another nice card in grindy games, since we can search up 2 1-mana cards in our deck and put them into our hand, so we might get 2 Champions of the Parish, or perhaps another 1-drop that is relevant at that moment. We've got a copy of Harsh Mentor, which can deal some damage whenever the opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land, which can be relevant in certain matchups. And 2 copies of Wear Tear to round out the sideboard to deal with artifacts or enchantments. We don't have any graveyard hate, as you can see. We already have the Mardu Woe-Reapers in the main deck, which can help against certain matchups, but mostly the reason is that cards like Rest in Peace and Gravedigger's Cage are quite expensive on Magic Online, so to keep the deck as budget as possible, I did not include any of those in the sideboard, so hopefully we don't have to face too many graveyard decks today. So yeah, that's it for the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's have a look at our opener, which is a bit heavy on the lands here. Got a turn 1 Soldier of the Pantheon, then Mentor or turn 3 Path. I think this hand's a mulligan, too many lands, not enough early action. And yep, this is a keep. We've got 2 of our signature cards here, Champion of the Parish. A bit unfortunate that we don't have a basic to go with our Clifftop Retreat yet. Opponent also mulliganed to 6. So we will get to Scry here. And we'll probably lead with our champions into Soldier, into Initiate. So I probably will scry a basic to the top, just so we can curve out a bit better. Mentor of the Meek we will put at the bottom. So opponents on the play starts with a Cavern of Souls, and naming Bird, alright. So not entirely sure what the opponent's up to, could be Bant Eldrazi, as they played a Birds of Paradise here. Alright, we drew another Inspiring Vantage, perfect, so we get to lead with Champion of the Parish turn 1, and then next turn we can go Champion into Soldier. And that way we'll have a 3-3 Champion and a 2-2 Champion. So let's see if the opponent is on Eldrazi here. They sack a Verdant. Down to 17, and there's a Viscera Seer, alright. So they might be a combo deck instead, and a Scavenging Ooze. Alright, so we have our work cut out. So I think we still go with our champion into Soldier plan, but I think we'll go with Kytheon instead of Soldier, since we might be able to transform Kytheon next turn. And we do have to run out our champions beforehand, and our Kytheon as well, since we need a 3-3 here to attack into this board. So let's move to combat and attack for 3. And I'll take the trade here if our opponent wants to double block, but I doubt they will. Opponent takes 3, and we'll say go. So next turn we could play out our Glory-Bound Initiate, pump our champion some more, and look at maybe transforming Kytheon, unless our opponent can go removal spell into Pump the Ooze, which would make an attack pretty bad for us. Nope, no attacks and no plays, so they could have Collected Company here, or perhaps Court of Calling at the ready. And if we lead with Thalia, we kind of force their hand perhaps, and then we can see if we still have a profitable attack or not. Spell Queller, alright, did not see that one coming. So we don't get to pump our champions here now, and we would be basically trading our champion with a Spell Queller or an Ooze, but then we also put creatures in the graveyard for the ooze to get bigger. So I actually don't think we want to attack here until we can play out our creatures in hand and then make a bigger attack. And then we'll play a tapped retreat and say go. Opponent now with the Gavany Township, that could be a problem, as they get to make their creatures bigger. Would love to draw a Lightning Bolt. And they're just going to activate the Township right now, and now we draw the Lightning Bolt, so the opponent played around us having or drawing the Lightning Bolt quite nicely here. So maybe we just play out our 2 creatures instead. Then we'll have a 4/4 champion and a 5/5. And we'll have decent attacks. And then we can maybe finish off the opponent with a Lightning Bolt. We could also just Lightning Bolt the bird or the Scavenging Ooze while we still can. But that means we don't get a great attack with our champion. So I think we just jam a bunch of creatures here and hope to kill the opponent next turn. Soldier also can attack through the Spell Queller, which is not irrelevant. And for now, Kytheon is going to stay home. So let's just attack with our 2 champions and see how the opponent wants to block, if at all. They could double block the 5/5 with the Spell Queller and the Viscera Seer, or the 4/4 with those 2, that also works. So we'll put the ooze first here, and then say damage, that's fine. Alright, so opponent down to 7, got rid of the ooze, which could have been annoying going late, and still have a decent board state. And of course, Lightning Bolt puts the opponent at a virtual 4. Opponent with a Devoted Druid, so that's also part of their combo. So we can expect them to have the Vizier of Remedies as well. A tap land, and they're out of cards, so no surprises coming from the opponent. They have 4 blockers, they can't activate Township, they just have Viscera Seer activations at the ready. And now we drew Thalia, which is slightly awkward, since if we want to play Thalia pre-combat, we don't get to a Lightning Bolt. But let's have a look here. So if we attack with everyone and exert the Initiate, opponent has to block the Initiate, otherwise they're dead to our Bolt. So let's say they put the Devoted Druid in front. Soldier can get blocked by one of the other mana dorks, and Spell Queller has to go in front of the champion. Yeah. If they want to eat something with Spell Queller, they're basically eating the Kytheon, which we could also make indestructible if we want to. So I don't think the opponent has any great blocks, so I think we just attack with everyone and then either make Kytheon indestructible or use Lightning Bolt somewhere. Attack with everyone and exert the Initiate here. And see how the opponent wants to block. So we could make Kytheon indestructible here, and if the opponent doesn't double chump, they are just dead to a Lightning Bolt. So let's see if they go for it. Alright, so they're just going to let this happen, which means they're dead to Bolt. They can sack the Viscera Seer a bunch, but that's not really going to matter. And now Bolt you and move on to the second game. Alright, let's go to sideboarding. So we're up against a 4-color company combo deck of sorts. So what do we want against that? Path to Exile looks interesting. Mirran Crusader looks okay since they had lots of green creatures. Don't know if we want to go as deep as Mantra of the Meek, since in a long game I don't think we're favored. Harsh Mentor doesn't stop mana abilities, could stop something like a Township, but I don't think that's quite worth it. So I could see getting rid of our mentors, bringing in the additional path to exile and another Mirran Crusader. Is there anything we don't really want? I think we just want to keep the deck lean and mean. Maybe we can shave a Thalia, since they might have more mana than we do. And it just stops Court and Company, basically. And then maybe we can bring in another Mirran Crusader. I think this looks okay. I think we'll try this and re-evaluate in the third game. Alright, so this hand is okay. 4 lands is a bit much, but we do have turn 1 champion, turn 2 Thalia. So I think we keep this one. And hope to draw some lightning bolts. Opponent's gonna have a turn 1 bird of some sort. Noble Hierarch. And we draw a Woe-Reaper, so let's just run out the champion here and say go. So next turn we have to decide between Thalia or double Woe-Reaper. Kitchen Finks, alright, that's pretty annoying. So the opponent gets to gain 2 and has persist, so it's gonna come back. Alright, Soldier, on the other hand, has protection from Kitchen Finks, so that's nice. So we could just go Soldier plus a Woe-Reaper here. Or if we want to prevent a company from happening next turn, we can play the Thalia preemptively, which I also don't mind. The upside of playing double 1-drop here is that we use our white mana a bit better, because we can't play triple 1-drop next turn if we don't draw a white source. So I kind of like playing 2 1-drops here more than playing Thalia, mainly for that reason. So let's go ahead and play out Soldier of the Pantheon. And then we can play the Woe-Reaper, and we won't be attacking with our champion yet. Birds of Paradise, that's fine. Into Vizier of Remedies. So that basically means that if they have a Viscera Seer, they can gain infinite life here. So hopefully they don't have Viscera Seer or Court of Calling. So let's go ahead and play out our Thalia. Pump our champion. And I think we go to combat. Could play another creature here. Make our champion a 5/5. Opponent could still double block, but I don't think they will, since they value their Vizier pretty highly. So yeah, I guess there's no point in bluffing a Lightning Bolt or a Path to Exile, since we have a Thalia in play anyways. So might as well play out our Kytheon here, pre-combat. So the opponent gets a free block with the Kitchen Finks. And then they'll gain 2 life. So if we attack with the champion, the opponent just gets to block. And then we didn't really deal any damage. So I think we just attack with the Soldier here. Put the opponent back down to 19. Opponent attacks with a 4/3 Kitchen Finks, will oblige here. I would rather have them gain 2 than lose 4, is the reasoning. Another Kitchen Finks, we gain 1 from our Soldier of the Pantheon. But now they have 2 brick walls, basically, now that they have the Vizier. We did draw Mirran Crusader, which is nice. So that's a way to attack past these kitchen finks. Could also maybe take a look at attacking with Kytheon, Champion and Soldier. Make our Kytheon indestructible. That way we can transform it and force the Vizier to attack Gideon, and then we can maybe eat it. But that does mean we have to attack with 3 creatures here, and the opponent gets to make some blocks. So yeah, if we attack with the Champion, Kytheon and the Soldier, they get to double block with the Champion, which is not good for us since we lose the Champion. But then we do get to potentially kill the Vizier, which puts them further from the combo. Or we can just play the Mirran Crusader and attack for 2. Yeah, I think we wait on attacking until the Champion doesn't die to the 2 kitchen finks, since I don't want to lose my entire board here. So let's attack for 2 with the Soldier. Could also leave it back to block the kitchen finks, of course. Play Crusader and say go. Eternal Witness, getting back the Windswept Heath. Still have 3 cards in hand. And we draw planes. So now if we attack with Kytheon, Crusader and Champion after playing the Woe-Reaper, we might be able to force something. So let's play the Woe-Reaper. Grow the Champion. And now the question is, do we want to bluff having something, or do we just play the planes so we don't have to take 1 when we make Kytheon indestructible? I think we just play out the planes. Move to combat. So this one can attack. This one can attack. Would be trading for the Eternal Witness. Maybe if we just attack like this, the opponent can put 2 kitchen finks in front of the Champion as well as the Eternal Witness. Or we can just attack with the Soldier of the Pantheon and trade that for the Eternal Witness. Or we can just suicide the Mardu Woe-Reaper. But at least we get to transform our Kytheon, which I think is important. Yeah, maybe this is better. So let's just attack like this. This way we still have some decent blockers that can block the opponent's stuff on the way back. So let's make Kytheon indestructible. And then go to damage. Kitchen finks come back, unfortunately. But we do get to transform our Kytheon. And now we will force the Vizier to attack our Gideon. Opponent with a collected company, so if they can hit a Viscera Seer, they can gain infinite life here. But looks like they completely whiffed. Wow. The Vizier has to attack Gideon. So now we get to block it with our Champion of the Parish, which will kill it. And now the opponent doesn't have this loop with Kitchen Finks anymore. And alright, so we get to untap. We can force another creature to attack Gideon, or we can just start attacking with Gideon himself. Don't have any flyers, so we can't ambush the Birds of Paradise. Could force the Noble to attack Gideon. Either way, I think we're playing the Initiate, and might as well do that pre-combat here. We get to exile the Vizier here with our Woe-Reaper and gain a life. And a nice combo here that we get to exert the Glory-bound Initiate and then untap it and make it indestructible with Gideon. So if we attack with the champion, our opponent still has a potential triple block. And with the Township, they can still put counters back on the Kitchen Finks. So I actually don't think we want to attack with the champion here, as strange as that may sound. So instead, I think we will just attack with our Mirran Crusader, which is a free attack. And then we could attack with the Soldier, trade it with the Eternal Witness, but I think it's better as a blocker. So we could force one of the Mana Dorks to attack Gideon. That seems okay. But first I think we'll attack with the Mirran Crusader here. Opponent takes 4, and then the Noble Hierarch will attack Gideon. So that's going to force the opponent to tap the Noble Hierarch. Could have also done it on the Eternal Witness, which we would at least be able to eat with the Champion of the Parish. But now if they want to activate their Township, they'll need another land. So the opponent is going to activate Township right now. No attacks. And Path to Exile is a nice draw here. Can get rid of one of the Kitchen Finks, although it does give our opponent 1 mana, which we may or may not want to do. So let's say we exile one of the Kitchen Finks and attack with everyone, including Gideon as a 4/4. How does that look like? The opponent gets to jump in front of our largest creature, Champion of the Parish, as well as, so let's say, the Glory-bound Initiate still takes 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So they wouldn't quite be dead. Well, we could attack with the champion if the opponent double or triple blocks. We can path one of them. Make Gideon attack as a 4/4. I think we need to be aggressive now. And then we can still use Gideon next turn pre-combat to untap or exerted Glory-bound Initiate. So opponent could block our Thalia with the Kitchen Finks. Woe-Reaper as well. So these would trade. Opponent can block the Eternal Witness. I think this looks okay. So this we expected. Now let's see if they want to double block the champion or if they're just going to chump some things. So this would be a trade and this would be a chump. I think this is fine. So the Kitchen Finks persist. And we'll say go, with Path to Exile at the ready. Untapped land from the opponent. Birds, and that's fine. Township, I think in response we want to exile one of the kitchen things here. Pay an extra for Thalia. Alright, Inspiring Vantage, so attack with Mirran Crusader champion. Opponent is just going to chump the champion again. So if we just attack with the Mirran Crusader, that's 4. If we attack with everyone, opponent blocks, takes 6, 7, 8. Probably still fine. Start getting into a creature and just get in there. Alright, opponent takes a bunch of damage, down to 2, then back up to 4. And let's see if they can do some damage here. Vizier of Remedies. And they still have enough mana to activate Township. And they could also have a Cord or Company here. Lightning Bolt, alright, that gives me hope. So I think we just want to attack with the Mirran Crusader, although the opponent could block it with the Vizier here. We could just bolt the Vizier, attack with the Mirran Crusader, but then if the opponent has a Company, we could still be in trouble. I think we need to play a little faster here, so I think we'll just attack with everyone. And see what happens. And we have a bolt at the ready if something goes wrong. Opponent is going for a Spell Queller just to block. So we can bolt that before it gets to block our Mirran Crusader, I think. And alright, that does it. Sweet. On to our next one. Time for game 2 here. And this opening hand's a little bit awkward since we have only one land that comes into play untapped here. So we're stuck playing one creature a turn here. Think we want to try another one. Alright, this is better. We've got our combo here. Champion of the Parish, Thalia's Lieutenant, Norin the Wary. And yeah, I'll keep that on top. Overgrown Tomb into nothing. Alright. We'll could get Fatal pushed here, but I think we still run out the champion. And say go. Alright, we're up against Living End as they cycle a Horror of the Broken Lands. So not a great matchup, unfortunately, since we're a creature deck and they get to Wrath our board. So the opponent's going to cycle a bunch here. When they cycle main phase, it usually means they want to try and keep hitting land drops. Not sure why they cycled main phase there. So here, kind of in an awkward spot where we do need to commit more creatures to the board to kill our opponent, but don't want to overextend and get wrathed and then have the opponent have a bunch of creatures in play. But we might not have a choice here. So if we play Norin, that's a way to pump our champion and not overextend into a Living End, but it is pretty slow. Maybe we just play the Glory-bound Initiate, and then next turn we can already exert it if the opponent doesn't go for a Living End. I think that's the plan here. So let's go ahead and hit for 2. And say go. So this is a matchup where we want to see our Mardu Woe-Reapers as they get to exile the opponent's creatures. So if they go for a Living End here, they would only be getting back 2 creatures, but they are pretty large. They can do it at instant speed with Violent Outburst, or they might cycle some more. Alright, they're cycling more. They could still have a Simian Spirit Guide, which would let them still cast one of their Cascade spells. In fact, they could have one right here, but we did draw a second Norin the Wary. So rather than playing out our Thalia's Lieutenant, we could just play some Norins, which are legendary, but of course when we cast the second one, the first one will get exiled, so we'll get a bunch more triggers anyways. Or we can just play 1 Norin rather than 2 to turbocharge our Thalia's Lieutenant. But I think if our opponent Living Ends, we're in trouble anyways. So we probably just have to play as if our opponent doesn't have it. Which means playing Thalia's Lieutenant and then playing Norin. And hope our opponent doesn't have Simian Spirit Guide's Violent Outburst here. Alright, let's move to combat, and now we have to decide if we want to exert or not. So the life gain doesn't really matter. So if we just hit for 4, next turn we get to deal lethal, or we could just gain some extra life, which would give us more time to find a win after the opponent Living Ends. 10, put the opponent to 6. Yeah, maybe we do exert anyways. A card that could punish us is Shriekmaw next turn on the champion, but Shriekmaw usually is more of a sideboard card, so sure, let's exert and just hope to get there. Norin gets exiled. And see if we get to deal 10. We do. Opponent falls to 6. Norin comes back, pumps our team some more. And I imagine we'll see a Violent Outburst now. Let's move to combat. And yep, now we'll see the Violent Outburst. So we could Lightning Bolt our own Thalia's Lieutenant here, which could be something, since then we would get it back and it would start growing very quickly with the Norin the Wary. Or we could just hope to draw another Lightning Bolt and win that way. So I think we'll let the Cascade happen. Opponent finds a Living End. Opponent casts a Living End. So an interesting spot. So next turn we would be taking 10, 14. So we would have a couple of turns to draw another Lightning Bolt. I don't think we'll be able to connect with the Thalia's Lieutenant. So I think our best bet is just drawing another Lightning Bolt. So I think we'll just let this happen rather than killing our own Thalia's Lieutenant in response. Opponent attacks. And we'll take 14 here. And Fulminator Mage. And yeah, not that it really matters, but we might as well Lightning Bolt now. And Plains is not gonna do it, so we are just dead here. Alright. So we'll move on to the next game. So in our sideboard, unfortunately, we don't have our Rest in Pieces. Grafdigger's Cage wouldn't do anything anyways against Living End, so we're just missing the 2 Rest in Pieces that I would normally have. So Mirran Crusader is interesting because it is actually pretty annoying for Living End, since most of our creatures are black or green. What else do we have? We have Path to Exile, which is kind of medium. Can exile a creature, but that's not really where you want to be. Mentor of the Meek can draw some cards. A Ranger could tutor up a Woe-Reaper, but is also not great. I think we just want to be aggressive and hope that the opponent doesn't have any Cascader in time. Imposing Sovereign doesn't do all that much. Let's see. Thalia is great in the matchup since the opponent has to pay a total of 5 to resolve Living End. They have to pay extra for the Cascader and for the Living End itself. So we want to basically find a hand with Woe-Reaper and Thalia. So I think we have the tools to just win a normal game. But I think I will take out the Mentors and bring in the Mirran Crusaders, at least 2 copies. Imposing Sovereign is basically just a 2-mana 2-1. So I don't think we really want it. This does not deal damage when the opponent cycles, unfortunately, but does deal damage if they would, for instance, use a Fulminator Mage. Not that I expect them to. So I guess I'll bring in a Ranger, another Crusader, take out another Path, and try it like this. Could keep the Mentors just to draw some cards instead of the Sovereign. But maybe we just want a 2-drop rather than a 3-drop. I guess I'll try 1 Mentor, 1 Sovereign. And submit it like this. We would like to play first. This hand does not have a Thalia in it. We have double Mirran Crusader, which is kind of slow. So I'm not sure if we can keep this one. Opponents will also have brought in Shriekmaws to deal with our Thalias. So it's not like a hand with Thalia is guaranteed to win us the game. But this feels a little too slow. Alright, there's a Woe-Reaper. Yeah, I guess we'll keep this one. Opponent also mulligans. Sovereign can go to the bottom. So now the question is, do we lead with the Woe-Reaper or the Champion? I think we'll lead with the Champion for multiple reasons. Opponent doesn't have a creature yet, we can exile. And Champion turn 1 also will end up dealing more damage. We do have another warrior in hand with the Initiate, which is nice, so we have at least 2 shots at exiling a creature in the graveyard. Opponent cycles a Street Wraith. Plays a Verdant. Says go. Draw a Thalia's Lieutenant. So it's a little awkward that if we want to play the Woe-Reaper now, we don't get to curve out perfectly. But I think we still want to play the Woe-Reaper rather than the Initiate, just so that we have multiple shots at exiling a card in a graveyard, and then we just get to bolt our opponent end of turn, which is also still fine. And then next turn we can decide between Initiate or Lieutenant. Seems okay. If we had another white source, then we could consider waiting another turn cycle before playing the Woe-Reaper, but given that we just have the single white source, I think we have to get the Woe-Reaper out there. So we will exile and gain 1, and then we'll hit for 2. Opponent fetches for 1. And does not cycle, so they might be on a Wrathier board plan and then figure it out. So we will just bolt them end of turn. And another Woe-Reaper, that's nice for later. So now the question is, do we want to play the Lieutenant or the Initiate? If our opponent's gonna Wrathier board next turn, then I would rather get in more damage now with the Lieutenant. So let's hit for 7. And the opponent is just dead next turn, so they do need to come up with at least Demonic Dread or Violent Outburst. Archfiend cycled. That's fine. So they could end up casting a Living End and getting back an Archfiend here, which I guess would kind of be problematic since that can just sweep away our Woe-Reapers. Opponent says go. So yeah, they clearly have a Violent Outburst here, which means playing something pre-combat doesn't make sense, since the opponent can just outburst in response when we play creature to exile it. So we have to attack. Opponent has the outburst and brings back the Archfiend, and that's gonna be annoying because we have 2 1-toughness creatures in hand. So we might be back on the hope to draw Lightning Bolt plan. Opponent has a Simian Spirit Guide, so they're actually gonna exile 1 more creature in addition. A second Spirit Guide. And there's the outburst. There's a Living End. So the opponent playing around Lightning Bolt here by not fetching with the Verdant and exiling 2 Spirit Guides instead. So that's smart on their part. But yeah, we're kind of in trouble here since we need to play out our creatures in order to not die, but opponent can just cycle any creature to Wrathier board. So I don't see how we get out of this. but I guess we can try. Very unlikely that the opponent doesn't have at least one cycler in hand, but you never know. And we're not gonna exile anything here. Carabid attacks. We won't block here. Opponent says go. We'll move to combat, and then we will likely see a cycler. We'll exert. And yep, there's a Street Wraith, but now our opponent is at 2. So if we had a Lightning Bolt, they would be dead now. So that's why they were a bit reluctant to cycle the Street Wraith. So yeah, we'll say go, and we have one more turn to draw a bolt. Can we get there? Nope. Soldier of the Pantheon would be able to block the Carabid, but is not going to survive the Archfiend. So yeah, that's unfortunate. One Lightning Bolt away in both games, but not a great matchup to begin with, I think. So yeah, maybe get those rest in pieces after all. Alright, on to the third match. We would like to play first, and this hand looks okay. So we'll keep. Got a turn 1 Woe-Reaper here into either turn 2 Thalia or Imposing Sovereign. Arbor Elf from the opponent. And there's our champion of the Parish. Alright, so I think instead we will just go champion plus Norin here. Could also play Thalia because the opponent looks to be on the Devotion deck. So that'll slow down some of their enchantments and land destruction spells. But I really like to get the champion online. Maybe it's just too important to get the Thalia out first to prevent the opponent from doing anything too broken. So let's attack for 2 first. And then play our Thalia. And then next turn we can go champion plus Norin. Wooded Foothills. Opponent untaps. Sylvan Caryatid. Alright, that's fine. It's gonna do a good job of blocking our 2-powered creatures here. Alright, Plains is not bad. So let's attack first. Opponent does a block, takes just 2. And then we'll go champion into Sovereign. And say go. Oath of Nissa costs some 2. So Thalia doing good work. Let's see what they reveal. Tamiyo. Alright, so this might be the doubling season deck. As they revealed a Tamiyo into another Oath of Nissa. And what do they reveal with the second one? A second Tamiyo, alright. Battlefield Forge. So let's go ahead and play Norin, pump our champion, and nothing really to exile with our Woe-Reaper. And then play the other Sovereign just to pump our champion, exile Norin. And get in with everyone. Opponent takes 8. Norin comes back, pumps our champion once again. And alright, that worked. So up against, I think, the Doubling Season deck with some Planeswalkers, Doubling Season effects, and Mana Dorks. So what do we want against this deck? Crusader seems okay, as it can attack past their green creatures. They might be bringing in some sort of sweeper effect. Path to Exile doesn't seem great, as they have mostly just Mana Dorks, but maybe they bring in some sort of creature after sideboard. What else do we want? Wear Tear could blow up a Doubling Season or one of the enchantments that they use in combination with the Mana Dorks. So that might be worth it, especially if we're just casting Tear for single white. And we are on the draw. Harsh Mentor does not work for Planeswalkers. So I don't think we need the Harsh Mentor here. Don't need Soul Warden, Stony Silence, Mentor, or Ranger. So we need to make 2 cuts here for the Wear Tears. This is a matchup that could go longer, so we might want maybe the other Mentor as well. Don't know if we also want the Ranger. Maybe we do, but maybe we're slowing down the deck a little too much now. Bolts seem fine, as they can also finish off Planeswalkers. Maybe we don't need all the red 1-drops. Maybe take out a Sovereign or 2. Yeah, this is too many 3-drops. I think we would rather want the Mirran Crusaders. I think we'll keep it at this, and then we can reevaluate after sideboard. The Wear Tear might also be a bit too reactive, but if they are on a Doubling Season plan, then it seems fine. And this hand also seems fine. Bit on the slow side, but some powerful creatures, and we do get to curve out nicely. So let's go ahead and play out a Woe-Reaper. Say go. Opponent with a turn to carry at it again. Another Woe-Reaper, so let's hit for 2, see if the opponent blocks or not. They did not, so they value their carry at it pretty highly there. But we will play out our Thalia in the hopes of slowing down any shenanigans. They also might have a sweeper effect here. Instead, another carry at it. Breeding pool. Okay. And Thalia's lieutenants are right on time. So I think we want to play the Woe-Reaper before the lieutenant, so that becomes a 3-2. Or we could play the lieutenant first and then play the Woe-Reaper, so the lieutenant becomes a 2-2 next turn, a 3-3. Yeah, I kind of like the idea of playing the Woe-Reaper first though. And then the Lieutenant. And now we get to attack past the Caryatids, unless your opponent wants to chump. Opponent takes all the damage, so we might have a sweeper effect incoming. Oh no, another warship. We did bring in our wear tears, so we're not cold to it like last time. Attack with everyone. Well, I'm not going to overextend into this worship. But yeah, we basically need to draw our wear tears. A second worship means we now need to draw both of our wear tears. Lightning Bolt doesn't do it. Utopia Sprawl. Is it Staticaster? That's fine. So there's Doubling Season. There's Tamio, so the opponent gets to ultimate her right away. But at least we get to see a bit more of the opponent's deck here. So we know how to hopefully beat them in game 3. And there's a Jace, which in response to the ability, I think I'll concede so we don't have to show the opponent our deck. And then we'll go to game 3 here. Alright, so how do we want to change things, if at all? Crusader still seems okay. If we do stall out with a worship in play, then having Mentor to draw cards seems good, but we kind of want to avoid getting into that situation in the first place. So I think our main deck's fine, still don't see a reason to include Harsh Mentor. Yeah, this looks good. So we'll be on the play for game 3. And yeah, this looks like an acceptable hand. Kind of just lots of dudes, but Thalia can at least slow down the opponent a bit. Utopia Sprawl from the opponent. And there's our Mentor, and we already have our Norin, so that's nice. Can hit for 2. And then play out our Thalia. There's a Caryatid. And Arbor Elf. So the opponent with a lot of mana at the ready. Okay, so we could play out Mentor of the Meek here. Either way, we are attacking first here. Opponent just takes 4. They might have another worship here. Alright, I think we do play the Mentor here, so we can set up drawing some cards next turn. Opponent untaps with Utopia Sprawl, so plenty of mana. And there's a Doubling Season, but nothing to do with it yet. And there's a champion of the Parish. So now we have to look at what the opponent could potentially do next turn. So they can ultimate Jace and potentially get something like an Emrakul in play. We have to decide how many cards we want to draw versus how many creatures we want to get in play. I think we start by playing the champion and drawing a card off of Mentor. Alright, we drew a mountain, so now we can play Norin and draw another card if we want to, or just play out the Initiate, which applies more pressure and doesn't trigger the Mentor anyway, so it's not like we lose out on a card. But Norin does pump up the champion quite a bit more. Yeah, sure, let's play the Norin. And lots of triggers. Pay 1, draw another Thalia. Alright. Move to combat and hit for 6. And Norin goes away. Opponent drops to 8. And let's see what they can do with their doubling season here. We might see a Planeswalker ultimate right away. Jace or Tamiyo are the ones we've already seen. And there we go, opponent makes a ton of mana, and it's gonna be a Jace. And yeah, we might see an Emrakul here. Mirran Crusader from our deck. And another Jace from the opponent's deck, so they're just gonna go through a bunch of Jaces before they finally get their big finisher, which I'm assuming is going to be Emrakul the Aeon's Thorn. Yep, there it is. Opponent casts it, and they get to take an extra turn because they did in fact cast the Emrakul. Get a Thalia's Lieutenant, and with doubling season they get to put 2 +1/+1 counters on our Mirran Crusader. Norin comes back and gets to see the Emrakul. And now the opponent gets to attack with everyone, and we should be dead here. Annihilator 6, and yep, we are dead. Alright, so not the most successful league, but hopefully it was still entertaining and we did get to do some sweet things. Maybe going forward include those Rest in Pieces in the sideboard for matchups like Storm and Living End. I would like to thank all my patrons for sponsoring the channel, and of course you can go visit the Patreon page yourself where you can get cool rewards for supporting the channel, and we're close to our next milestone, so go check that out if you have some time. And that's it, I want to thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.